Cool. All right. Aftershocks, Tremors, Matt and Chris, we're back here with another discussion episode on this one. And this is a special one today, ladies and gents. We are celebrating the 2-year anniversary of Aftershocks. I can't believe it's been 2 years already. And to celebrate this momentous occasion, what better way to do it than to bring back our very first guest on Aftershocks 2 years ago?
So first of all, congratulations to 2 years, and I can't even believe it's been 2 years since
2
the
years.
first episode.
Yeah,
Man, I feel like I've aged 50 since then.
Dude, I'm right there with you, man. I know it's been fast, but there's a lot of shit that's been going on, obviously, for the last 2 years. Obviously,
No kidding.
yeah. But yeah. So anyway, let's welcome our guests from UPSTATE Records. We got Mario and Kim Cangemi. What's going on, you guys? Thanks for coming on.
Thank you for having us. It's a pleasure as always.
Sure. Absolutely.
You guys have been a great support of the label. I really appreciate all the things that you've done for our bands, getting them on, showing them the support, and only can hope that we can reciprocate 1/10 of what you guys do for us.
Well, you have, and obviously it's been our pleasure with all these bands because they're freaking awesome, man. I mean, these bands are kick ass that you got on UPSTATE. So our pleasure, and you know it is anytime we can do those bands because, like I said, you guys, and we'll get into it obviously in a little bit, but we love the bands that you've been signing, both old and new. And actually, let's start off. I want to congratulate you guys both for winning a local award there in upstate New York for best independent label. You beat out a few other really, really solid labels there. Equal Vision, obviously, it's been around forever, and Magnetic Eyes are really solid new labels. So to beat out two really well established labels like that, that's great, man. Talk a little bit about that award and what's that all about? Is it the Eddie Award, I think it said, right?
Yeah. Thomas Edison Award, and
okay.
The Albany area has been, really rich in music for a long time. And actually the owner of Equal Vision is part of the hardcore scene from when, I jumped in the mid to late 80s. But the Eddies is just a way to bring the community together. And I think it's in its 4th year now.
Wow. Okay.
And it's a great sight to see, and it's growing. All local artists from all different genres get together, and for us, and I wanted to say this during the show, we're just we're just an underground DIY label, and for us to be an even talked about in the same vein as those other labels is a shock to us, and for us to walk up there and receive the award, it was totally unexpected, and it's honor. We're not in this to win awards or anything. We just put our head down and go. So to be recognized amongst your peers in your community, it's an awesome feeling.
It is. And it was so incredibly appreciative for the amount of work that the people that judge it put it together. Everybody, we were very thankful that they've been putting this together and making it happen.
Yeah, no, and that's got, like I said, it's got to feel great. What I think is great about it too is, you guys, you both obviously. This is like you just mentioned. It's not only an underground hardcore metal label you have, a DIY label, but it's also family run. I mean, it's you two that run it. I remember Mario when we did talk to you a few years ago. I think, like I was telling you, most people I think who want to start an independent label. I mean, at least I do. When I wanted to start my label. And when I did it, my intention was to make it really this inclusive sort of, entity with friends and family that were going to help out and that were into the music. And, but that vision sometimes can, it's easier said than done at times. And but with you guys, I mean, it's, because obviously mixing business with family and friends sometimes could be a little, but you guys, in your case, you're also raising a family as well, and you're doing this, and so you've got your, obviously your daily responsibilities, and you guys have defied, sort of the odds to really put together this real reputable and respectful, record label, obviously by winning this award. I guess my question to both of you is, how the fuck do you do it? I mean, what's the secret to your success being able to multitask with both the label, the business side, obviously with your life, along with the daily responsibilities you have as parents and raising a family?
If we knew that answer, we'd be able to help you with that.
I think ultimately, and thank you for all the kind words, and once again, we only see it from our side and we just do what we do. So when we hear those kind of words, it really puts gas in the tank. And I think I've said that a few times, but we're just two parents raising kids, coaching baseball and all that kind of stuff. And we have a passion for music, and we have to let that out. I see the bass on the wall. You're big fans of music. If we were to take music out of our lives, something would be missing. So it's worth it. It's a lot of fun. There's some times where it's a little stressful and everything, just to keep up the momentum. But when you get like an award like that, it gives you some pause. You're just like, geez, do we reach the pinnacle? Or are we, going on a downward trend, or does it, motivate us? And in this case here, it's a complete motivation. When we came back from the awards, I think we jumped right back into it and said, all right, what's our next move?
Right. Yeah. Yeah, no, absolutely. Well, and I mentioned on the outset, Mario, I mean, obviously we said you're the first, guest we had here on Aftershocks 2 years ago, right as the pandemic hit. And obviously, it was so unfortunate, I know, for both of you, because it seemed like it really happened just when the label and the bands really were really starting to gain, like you just said, the word momentum. And I can't imagine what you guys had to go through as an independent label to be able to, survive and push ahead during that period. I mean, it would have been obviously really easy to just say, you know what, whatever, we'll just let it go and pick it back up when things go back to quote unquote normalcy. But I mean, but because like I said, as we said, momentum. I mean, any band or people in the music business understand that when it comes to the music business and music and bands, it's all about momentum. And once that momentum is sort of lost, it's really almost impossible to sort of get it back. But you guys, you both pushed through all the craziness. You kept putting out quality releases, both new and old, and because of it, here you are, like I said, continuing to be one of the best hardcore metal labels on the globe. So, I mean, I guess just if you guys don't mind, talk a little bit about some of the, I guess, the biggest, obstacles that you had to overcome throughout that whole ordeal, because, as we talked back then, I remember you saying you had to put things on hold a little bit. And I'm sure you had some artists who probably weren't very happy or understanding because, as we know, not to sound condescending at all, but a lot of artists don't really understand the business side of things when you're running a label. So I guess just walk us through some of the biggest and toughest challenges that you both faced, keeping things afloat during the last 2 years.
Well, I think that the biggest thing that we ran into was watching a band like Gloves Off. And they had a kick-ass release that released March 13th?
March 13th, Friday
the 13th. And then everything shut down, all their shows, because you release, you want to get out there and tour. And all of a sudden, all that was taken away from them. That was probably the hardest thing about the entire pandemic, because you just want to see these guys succeed. You want to see them be able to take that release and get it out there to everybody. To me, that was probably one of the hardest things. After that, I know it got to a point where we were running this label, but we didn't feel comfortable like selling stuff because everybody's out of a job. Everybody's, on hardships. So we got to a point where we're like, okay, what do we do? So instead of trying to push new stuff, we took a little bit of a break and just kind of brought back some of the older stuff that was out there and just like, hey, watch this video, watch that video, not buy anything, but just check out some stuff. That was one of our first tactics as, everything's kind of came down. Yeah. What else you got?
Yeah. To keep us, relevant, so to speak. And, Kim's absolutely right. It didn't feel right pushing. So it also gave us some time to really reflect and think about what we can do. And, during the pandemic is when we partnered with Blood Blast. And when we started the label, we knew some things about releasing, but we didn't know as much as what we've learned since we've joined forces with Blood Blast. And during that time, it really allowed us to kind of develop a strategy, acquire all the assets that you need, press kits and photos. So if anything, we took a step back, went onto the sidelines, huddled up a little bit, but I think we came out of it in some regards stronger.
Okay.
And the one thing you had mentioned, maintaining that momentum, that's the yin and yang,
Yeah.
and really somewhat of an advantage because, let's face it, there's days with your job, you're like, oh my God, this is a tough day. And then you have a partner next to you who's like, all right, come on, let's get it going. And that's what keeps us moving and feeding off of each other. And, sometimes it gets contentious because, she's got a strong idea or I have a strong idea, but at the end of the day, you just got to be able to communicate and talk through it. And that's one of the keys, to maintaining that momentum for such a long stretch.
Yeah, it definitely helps being competitive with each other because we're always pushing each other a little bit further.
Oh, nice.
Nice. Well, as a label, and specifically as a smaller label, the pandemic probably, I'm making an assumption, but I'm sure you're going to shake your head and go, yep, that's right. The pandemic made you go and become social media masters.
Yeah.
You just had to, because there was no other way to reach fans anymore. For at least for the first year, you couldn't send bands out. You couldn't tour. You had two options: put a video out on YouTube if you could get everybody to shoot it in their garage and find some film guy to put it together, or be on social media nonstop.
Yeah.
So for you guys, what was the importance of social media during the pandemic, and how did it change how you approach things now that everything is open? Do you still look at it as a much different thing than you did 2 years ago?
So, Chris, I'm going to jump in. So, yes, absolutely, social media is a critical part. But what we learned most importantly, because, everybody's got an opinion.
Sure.
So we just stopped following people with an opinion and started following more people that are musicians. So from a social media perspective, all those people that, negative Nancy's or got some agenda, they don't like this, everything's a hoax, or, we're all dying from COVID. We're middle of the road people. So the one thing we learned is the more that we support musicians, through it, the more that shows up on our feed. So yes, absolutely. We stay connected, through social media, but you talked about making videos, and all I can think about is the quarantine video.
The brick by brick video.
Oh yeah.
To me, that just completely signifies the pandemic for us. So yeah, we did take some opportunities to, really jump into social media, but I don't know.
I think social media has been important all along. We just had to go to it more so during the pandemic than ever. And it definitely made us stronger because we had to get out on different platforms that we were neglecting. So I think that definitely, pushed us into, the Twitter phase and some of the other phases out there. But it's still just as important because we're reaching people that are not in our local market,
Sure, definitely. Is it important now, or probably more difficult? Difficult is probably a better word than important, but is it difficult to decide what social media platforms to use now? Because every 2 weeks, something is bigger than the next.
Yep.
I mean, a year ago, everybody was Twitter and YouTube. Now everybody's TikTok. It changes so fast. I don't even know how a label like you guys can keep up with it, because it's small. You start building a following, and then everybody's not on that platform anymore. They've moved on to the next thing. So how difficult is it for you guys to keep up?
We have 3 secret weapons.
Kid 1, Kid 2, Kid 3. They know more about some of the TikTok and stuff like that than we do.
Well,
so
true.
We're constantly, okay, what's hip? What's going on? Where's everybody?
But Chris, what I'll say, Chris and Matt, it's really, people like you and the people that run a podcast that bring people on. So I'm constantly listening to podcasts, and it's amazing how much you can learn. So here you may be listening to Jamie Josta, and he's interviewing somebody, right? Sure. But they start talking about music business, and if you're paying attention, they're dropping like all these little nuggets of information, what they do to promote themselves. So when you're talking about staying current with, what's the new platforms that are out there, I just listen to podcasts, to hear what the latest trends are, and that's how we gained a lot of insight to what's out there.
And not to mention kind of staying relevant on all of them. That way, when one takes off, we're already there. We're already pushing stuff out there, and hopefully we have a following, you know?
Right.
But it is hard. Definitely hard to keep up.
Yeah, it definitely is. Well, guys, I wanted to dig into kind of the back end of the business a little bit, because you know we all know bands at different levels. You guys obviously have labels. Matt's had a label. I worked for Standby Records for a couple of years when it was coming up, so I had my share of dealing with a label as well. And we all have dealt with bands, and you guys know as well as I do, if there's 4 guys in the band, there's one guy that's a business guy. There's one guy that's the grunt that'll do whatever they need to do to get things done. And then there's 2 guys that are just looking to chase girls or chase drinks or whatever, you know. There's it almost always works out that way. For you guys as a small band where you can't really take a big loss because a band just isn't reliable, isn't dependable, how do you guys judge bands from the time you meet them to the conversations that you have with them to deciding, okay, these guys are worth the investment, our money, to try and push their music forward?
That's a really good question, because I mean, you know, bands can tell you anything that they want to say, right?
Right.
So a lot of it is instinct. We definitely go by a lot of our gut. We have to talk to them. We have to see what they're doing. We have to, you know, kind of know where they're going, where they want to go. We're definitely looking for bands that they're willing to work. So the bands that are like, we're doing this, this, and this on their own before they even come to us, and we see that's right there is a green flag. One of them that tells us that they've got something going, you know, and we always tell them the harder they work, the harder we're going to work. We got to work together. It's a partnership. If it's not a partnership, it's not going to work. So
Yeah. When you said, you know, it's instinct, there's a lot of instinct, but there's also a lot of, you know, data that's out there as well. You know, we talk to the bands, how many shows that they're playing, because, you know, each band is going to move at, you know, a certain amount of material during the pre-order phase. But bands and how active they are, they can kind of give us some insight on, you know, how much material do you move at shows, and that helps us forecast, you know, the amount of, you know, physical media that we need to invest in, or how much marketing that we're going to invest in. It's just really about being realistic. And sometimes I'm really happy that all the bands that we work with are realistic. They're like family. They're understanding. You can have those communications. You know, a label is like a business, but we don't run it like a business. We run it like a partnership. So they have a certain end of the bargain, you know, put out the best music possible, and our end is to promote the hell out of it, you know?
Right.
So if they're living up to their obligations and we're talking together, we're going to be able to live up to our obligations, and we're going to find that happy medium. But sometimes your instinct is wrong, you know, and things just don't move as well as you had hoped. Same with the band, you know, as much as they would hope. But I think over time we've gained a lot of experience to kind of, you know, get a general sense of where we should be. And sometimes it's just a matter of hitting a lot of singles as opposed to home runs. And I think ultimately that's where we're at. We're not looking for a hype band that's going to sell, you know, 100,000 units. You know, we like the smaller underground, and we can keep things manageable.
Sure. You know, and the thing too with you guys is one of the things that you're doing, you know, and it's something I've never really seen before with a hardcore label, and especially just with an independent label in general these days, is that you're actually nurturing your artists, these newer bands. You know, because that's something. I mean, we'll just take, I guess, you know, some of the bands that you've had, and I'll give an example of that. I mean, Gloves Off and Smash Your Enemies to me are really proof. They're results to me of what you guys have done in terms of nurturing those bands. I mean, you know, they used to be artist development, you know, for years, obviously in the you know, with record labels, obviously that's gone out the window for the last 20 something years. You know, once obviously the internet came along and streaming and everything, I mean, the whole industry just kind of basically dumped our A&R and just artist development in general. But that's something you guys are doing on a DIY level, is you're not just signing a band, putting out a record. Okay, didn't sell well. Okay, see you later. Which a lot of labels do that. You guys actually sign the band. They put out an EP, get their feet wet. So you said you're nurturing them. Then they come out, and now, like for instance, with Gloves Off and Smash Your Enemies. I mean, both those releases this year, just you could just see the maturity and musically and just how much they've grown musically and professionally and everything. And that's just something, like I said, you just do not see that with independent labels doing. So I mean, how much of a philosophy is it for the label to do just that and nurture these bands and develop them, since that also goes hand in hand with what you as a label promote in terms of, and what you live by, which is that familial aspect that that Upstate Records is known for.
Well, I think a lot of it comes down to is we need to set them up for success. And in doing so, if we can help guide them, getting the best promo photos, the best, thinking about videos, thinking about things that are going to get them out there and, helping them. And we talk to them. Again, a lot of this is we've become a family. So we do talk to these guys on a regular basis offline, even if it's not about music. So we're really, it does come down to setting them up for success and taking it slow, like you said, with the EPs. So a new band, we're not going to go out and do 1,000 CDs, and the whole kit and caboodle, but let's give you the tools to, get some exposure and gain some ground. And then with the next release, let's go even further and everything. Oh, yeah. Sorry. We have somebody jumping in. Hold on.
You got to get on camera now.
Get on camera.
Yes.
You got to say hello.
It's like, nope.
Oh,
that's the best hello.
Best hello ever. There you go.
Counterfeit. Like a true little Italian. I think what just to add on, when we talk about artists or A&R, I think where Kim was going as well is it's relationships, and we don't have a conscious effort to develop bands. We're kind of developing in a cohesive manner. We feed off of them, they feed off of us. So we're nurturing them, but they're also nurturing us, in regards to that relationship. And what we bring to the table is, we've put out a number of releases, so we've gained experiences, working with people like yourselves. We gain information from you guys that we pass along and say, all right, hey, Matt and Chris, want to get you guys on a podcast. We want to do an interview with you. Here are some tips, here are some things to work out, so that they have those opportunities and really put their best foot forward. Sure. But really, once again, when I look up and down our roster, they're just all good people. They're really just all good people. And we're both so grateful for the relationships that we've developed. It just makes that atmosphere a whole lot, I don't know, positive. Not like a business thing ever. So that's the way I feel, and that's the way we're kind of growing this A&R department, is just to be human beings.
And a lot of it started from him being in bands and understanding, like, when he was signed to a label, the things that we were seeing that we felt they should have been doing, but he was doing. So we didn't want to take that approach either. We wanted to come at it at a different angle from the musician standpoint.
Yeah, most definitely.
Yeah, very cool. Yeah. Well, let's talk about now musically with the label. I mean, one thing I'm noticing musically is that you've really, you're really tapped into the metallic hardcore band scenes. I mean, in fact, a lot of these bands are more metal, I would say, with more hardcore elements. Now, I mean, compared to, I think, when you guys first started out, I mean, I'm just, like I said, Bushido Code, Gloves Off, Smash Your Enemies, Brick by Brick. I mean, just those four off the top of my head. I mean, if you could put those four on a tour or a lineup, and that would be such a great package right there. But do you feel like now that you've got a really solid core of these up and coming bands now to work with? Because I'm sure obviously I'm sure you had a vision, when you started the label, and you kind of had an idea of what direction you wanted to go, the label to go in. Do you feel like with these bands that you've accomplished that sort of at least short-term goal and vision that you set out to do when you started the label?
I think so. When we just love heavy music, period. And heavy music has a lot of tentacles, you know, it expands, you know, you have some punk music that is heavy and it has breakdowns, you know. So we just, you know, have fallen into like what we're putting out what we like, you know, and sometimes we'll come across something that isn't you know, metallic hardcore, so to speak, but we like it, you know.
Sure.
We just but we've been more and more conscious that, you know, we have a following, you know, that people expect a certain kind of music. So if we were to bring on like a punk type band, not sure it would really go as well, you know, if they really necessarily fit in that kind of genre, you know. So I think ultimately we're just landing in a place that, you know, has a certain branding with our label, and that's a little bit more on the metallic-y, hardcore, thrashy side, and that's the type of music that we enjoy. At least I enjoy.
Oh, me too. But just, I mean, we do have some stuff coming up that is going to branch out a little bit. So we've got the metallic hardcore, but we also have, you know, a little bit more of the beat down, a little bit more that brings in some hip hop elements to it. So yeah, so we got some pretty cool things coming up.
Yeah, we're definitely not shy from expanding our horizons. But once again, you know, there's a certain, you know, genre that seems to follow us, and you know, if it's good, we dig it. It's heavy, we're gonna put it out. It's as simple as that.
Yeah, very cool. You know, when I was, you know, doing my label, I would constantly be, you know, looking at other labels to see what they were doing, and there were I remember two particular labels in general that I sort of wanted to sort of emulate at the time, because this was in mid to late 2000s. I was Eulogy and Bridge 9. I remember, you know, Bridge 9 was still, it was kind of a little bit new at that point, but it was really starting to take off. And Eulogy was one of the, you know, the really up and coming labels at that time. They had Unearth, I remember. So when Unearth, you know, took off, they really benefited from that. I remember Bridge 9 was getting a bunch of the New York hardcore, you know, veterans, you know, re-releasing stuff on their label. And of course they had the Boston bands like Death Before Dishonor and so forth. So when it comes to like other, you know, hardcore and metal labels, especially in the Northeast area there, you know, with labels like Bridge 9 and Fast Break and so forth. I mean, do you look at these other labels as competitors, or do you not even focus on what they're doing? I mean, does what they do no,
not even close.
Okay,
you know.
So
well, go ahead.
I was going to say a lot of the things that we've done since we've started is to work with other labels.
Oh, okay.
So we put out other releases, co-releases with other labels. We do a lot of, you know, graphic and promotional work for other labels. The way we see it is we're all in this together. We all are putting out music. We can't all have the same bands. It's just not going to happen. And there's going to be labels out there. So let's support each other and let's push each other forward. As for watching what they're doing, not really. We just are kind of going with the flow with what we're doing.
Yeah, in some regards, like when I jump on social media, I'm just like everybody else, and I'm looking at things just like everybody else. And you know, there's a ton of labels that are putting out a ton of great stuff, and I don't care if I like it, I like it. You know, and if there's a band out there that's on another label,
good for them.
you know, I'm gonna like it, and you know, share it and support. You know, because just like Kim said, you know, in the early days when we put out those comps, that was in collaboration with other labels. So it was working with those other labels and trying to just, you know, all, you know, shine together, so to speak, grow together, support the scene the best way we were possible. So, yeah, we watch, but not from that competitive standpoint. Really just hoping the best for everybody, quite honestly, and open the door for collaboration on future projects with other bands.
Yeah,
Sure.
that's awesome.
No question. Well, you know, first thing, please do not ever go and do the hard right with the style of the music that you put out.
It will not be hard right.
What's a hard right?
Or hard right, hard left, whatever. What I'm
REM
saying is,
or what?
what I'm saying is, there are labels that are out there, and I'll name them. You don't have to, but like Victory or Relapse or even now Roadrunner, that have they established their brand, what they were, and now they're doing something different. And you know, like, and I'm not even saying it's bad, like, but like Relapses went from doing death metal and now they're doing, you know, stoner rock. I mean, totally different stuff. And Victory, obviously, in the they used to be kind of
Yeah.
punk, hardcore, and then they became emo, and they just kind of lost direction to where I think when that happens to a label, especially an underground labels build their own following, like you guys were saying earlier. And a lot of times the fans of a label will just buy or at least try what you guys are selling because they know there's a certain flavor to it.
Right.
And then once a label changes and you've confused things, then it's like, okay, now you got to go from a loyal fan base to a record by record, song by song fan base, which I think in the end makes it a lot harder for you guys. Is that fairly accurate?
Absolutely. And honestly, anything that we have coming on are bands that all play together.
Okay.
So if they are bringing in different styles and everything, they all mix together. They're all still kind of tight niche, and it's still within the same genres. It's just bringing in a little bit more elements, but no, definitely would never go, off the deep end.
Right.
But you say that, but in some regards, I can understand in some regards. And
Sure.
as you guys were talking, I'm kind of, it was an interesting question because we're all like, lovers of music. And you can see the temptation to like not even consciously say we're going to go in this direction. It's just your taste evolved. And I think of like the band like Metallica. Over the years, their sound changed and evolved. And I could see like a label kind of doing that. But then you could look at a band like Terror or Hatebreed, they have this formula. And that's really kind of like the genre that we're in, or the mentality that we're in. It's like we have to stay true to our focus here. We don't really have any desire or temptation, at least at this point, to kind of drift into other areas. We're completely satisfied in this lane. And well, I like it. That was a really cool question.
Oh, thanks. Well, yeah, I mean, I bring it up just from the fact that
You've seen it.
Well, I've seen it, but I've been the fan of that.
Yeah.
Roadrunner Records for years took my money. I didn't know anything about their band. I didn't know what Fear Factory was. I didn't know what Machine Head was. I knew that it said Roadrunner Records on the back of it. And that was all the more I needed to give them $15, and then all of a sudden they started throwing me Nickelback and stuff. And I was like, whoa, what are you doing here? It just didn't work. And I think if you look at the history, I mean, regardless of if you like what they put out, I don't especially love what this label puts out, but I certainly respect them to death. Metal Blade. Metal Blade Records has been around for 40, 50 years, whatever it is. Never changed, never really there's not a pop record on there, and they are probably, if I was going to start my own label today, they're the blueprint. Yeah. Pick your poison, stay with it, and you guys are doing the same thing, and that's admirable because, as somebody that now knows the business a little bit, it's easy to go to where you can make a little more money. And that's the easy way, but it's cheap money. It's quick money. It's not longevity money that will sustain you forever. Right.
Right. And really it's kind of, breaking down what you intended to do to begin with. You have a change in your business philosophy because this is happening, and the temptation to chase the dollar bill is what probably leads a lot of these labels or just in general down to make different choices. So, we're sticking to our motto to have, as much fun with this thing as much as possible and put out the heaviest music that we can.
And the funny thing is, as you're saying this right now, we just started realizing that we need to get back down to our roots already. So the promo we put out today with the announcement of Kind Eyes, we wanted a nitty gritty, rough, old school promo video like we used to do when we were first started. Right. And we'll definitely be doing that a little bit more and switching it up and making sure that we're not following a formula where it's like, okay, it's Monday, they're going to post this. It's Tuesday, you're going to post that. And so it's perfect that you say that because it's exactly what we've been talking about.
Yeah, exactly.
Cool. Excellent. Well, one of the things I did want to ask you guys too is when a band, all these bands, whether they're small or big, they're all friends with each other pretty much. If they're stylistically the same, it doesn't matter if they're Metallica or they're the smallest band. If they live in the same area, they all kind of know each other. They've all gigged with each other, or they've hung out at a party or whatever with each other. Well, a lot of times they bring that relationship to their recordings. And I'll use Brick by Brick as an example, where they worked with Chuck Billy on the most recent record. And that's great. I'm sure as a band and as a label, you're probably like, yeah, Testament, they got a big audience. That'll be very helpful. But then I start wondering, as a label, what does that cause you guys as far as the back end mayhem to get contracts and permissions? And does Nuclear Blast just say, sure, go ahead, we don't care? Or do they say we want a percentage? I mean, it's one thing that the bands don't want to hear about any of that. I'm sure the bands are just like, well, just make it happen, So how does that work for you guys, that it goes from a cool idea to, okay, everything's fine and nobody's getting sued and everybody's happy with the final product?
I'll let you handle this one.
Yeah. So Chris, I wish I had like this elaborate story where, our lawyers sat down with their lawyers and they said this and they said that, we negotiated this and we had Chris, or really what it is Warren Lee, who was the roadie for Slayer,
yeah.
those people, and he's a good friend of Mike. So Warren, through his connections, knows Chuck Billy and all those crews out there, and it was just a phone call and say, hey Chuck, would you be interested in singing on my buddy's track? And he said yes. He sent it over, we put it on the album, that was it.
Oh, nice.
So it was nothing like where you were going.
So there was no like having to get clearance or anything from a label to do that?
No.
Oh, okay.
Chuck is the coolest dude.
And this is probably like a 1 in a million shot type thing, because we definitely didn't expect that. But we definitely have to say a huge thank you to Warren too for all that he does. He's
most definitely
been great to work with.
Sure. And Chris, I gotta tell you, Testament is like one of my all-time favorites. So when Mike came in and said, hey, we got Chuck Billy singing, I'm like, oh my God, that's so fucking awesome.
That's awesome. Yeah.
Nice.
Oh yeah. Well, one thing too, I mean, with the label, I mean, I think that you both, do really well with it, is that you've got a great balance, speaking about big bands like Testament, you've got such a really good balance, I think, of, we've been talking about obviously all the newer bands you have, but you also have a great balance of veteran bands also as well, the label that you've worked with. I mean, Leeway, Sub-Zero, Count Time, the new Powerhouse, now it's coming out. That sounds great. We're talking to Chris next week. We can't wait for that. How vital is that one of the philosophies too? Do you try to purposely balance by getting, and signing some of the more, established bands, as well as mixing them with these newer bands? Is that something too that maybe, I'm not saying you're not going to do it as much anymore, but because you're being successful now so much with these newer bands, is that something you're going to continue to still do, is really focus on trying to also get some of those, established, classic veteran bands on the roster going forward?
You go for this one.
Chris or Matt, it just kind of happens naturally. There really isn't any intention or direction that we're headed. Say, all right, we need to have, a roster of older veterans and we want to talk to younger bands. It's just really the way it happens. And working with the veteran bands is always kind of nostalgic for me, because growing up listening to these guys as a fan, and now we're actually putting out their music. It's really an honor for me and us to be part of that. And I don't ever want to say, oh, you guys are too old and we don't want you on the label because we're just focusing on up and coming bands. Sure. And vice versa. We still want to appeal to the up and coming bands because we want to help them too. And, they're putting out killer music just like the veterans are. So, there's not, and we've gotten some feedback like, well, what are you guys doing? Are you working on older bands? Or are you working on younger bands? Well, we're working on the bands that we want to work with. If you're putting out great music and you're great people, we want to work with you, and we're not, short-sighted or egotistical to say you fall in that category into that category, and we're not going to work with you, or you fall in this category, we're going to work with you. It's just the way it kind of rolls in regards to who we're going to work with.
And I think one of the coolest things about having that balance of those bands is some of these younger guys, they're on a label with these veterans, and to them, they are promoting the hell out of it because they are so excited to be there, and it feels really good to give them that. You know what I mean? And again, with the older ones, I mean, they've been around for so long that, we've idolized, we've looked up to them for many, many years. And again, it's such a huge honor to be able to help them push out that music,
Yeah. Well, and the other thing too, just with a lot of, especially the newer hardcore bands, and metal bands it's one of the things when I did my label, I had only one band that would tour consistently and not just play shows locally. That was Count Time. They were really good about touring. And, it was really difficult though, to get a lot of these bands to get on the road and get out of their bubbles to because obviously, of course, they all did well within their, their respective regions. But when it came to touring, it was really tough. I mean, they might have gone on one tour, a little mini tour, and a lot of them just were like, I don't want to do this. They didn't feel it, and that's, I think, one of the toughest things too, when you're signing these newer bands is, are they willing to get in that van and go across the country and play, tour for a month? Does that factor into any, when you guys are thinking of signing a specific band, a younger band, does that factor into your decision making, the fact whether they're going to tour or not, to help obviously just get the their music out there to more people than just their local area?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's one of the first questions we ask is, one of the things we ask is, what are your goals? Where are you looking to go? How far do you want to take it? So there's a couple different categories. The ones that want to tour Europe and this place and that place, all right, they want to tour. We can definitely help them try to get there. Again, with being realistic, that it all comes down to being realistic. Okay, are you going to physically get there? We do have to understand that in this market, most people have day jobs, families. So it is harder for them to tour.
Sure.
So with the bands that can't get out there and do a coast to coast run, we'll talk to them about doing, weekend runs, venture out into different areas. This weekend you go, over here, and then the next weekend go out the other way, 6 hours away, and do like a 3-day run and just start there and start trying to, branch out a little bit and get into different markets that they haven't been in before. So yeah, we definitely ask that. And it is definitely an important thing because as we know, that's where they're going to sell their merchandise. That's where they're going to reach their fans. They're not going to do it through us. We're going to help them. We're going to push them. But at the end of the day, getting out there and being face to face with people, that's what's going to get them, to be put on the map.
Yeah. Well said. Well said. It's absolutely a critical part of, joining with a band is they need to have a plan to play out because that's the way that they're going to move their material. They're going to gain the most audiences, most fans. It's absolutely critical.
Well, and how many of them, I mean, say they're going to do it and don't do it though. I mean, that's the main thing. I mean, I've worked with a lot of bands that they were like so excited. Yeah, we're going to go out there. We're going to just tour and play all these festivals, yada, yada, yada. And then when it came down to it, they didn't do anything really, So it's like, I mean, do you see a lot of that where it's like, a lot of promises these guys have, but at the same time, following through is a whole different, it's a whole different story.
We're kind of trying to lock down a run after the release. So we're releasing, setting the release date based on at least a short run. Okay. That way we know right after the release, they're guaranteed to take 3 to 6 days and get out there.
Yeah.
So that is one thing that is kind of critical. And again, this is all band by band. Every band has different needs. And so we kind of base it on each one.
Okay.
Yeah. How active they are will, translate into the type of, package that we put together for them to get out there. But yeah.
Very cool. Yeah. Wow. Now you brought up Blood Blast before. You guys are still working with Blood Blast, correct? Okay. How was that relationship been in terms of really having? I mean, did you guys see once you started working with Blood Blast? Did you start seeing really an influx of a lot of artists and bands coming to you and wanting to be part of the label because of being a part of that, distribution, which is obviously globally, it's just monstrous. I mean, has that really been such a huge, I guess, part of you selling your guys selves to other bands to sign them, especially the veteran bands that you guys have on the label?
Yeah, I think so. I think Blood Blast brings a certain level of exposure, potential to the releases. They're very focused on heavy music and what they, pitch behind the scenes. And also, obviously, they're working under the umbrella of Nuclear Blast. So there's that aura of, hey, we have a distribution company that really focuses on metal type music. And their reach has been fantastic. So definitely, I think it has been a positive when talking with new bands coming onto the label.
It's been a positive for us because our bands, I mean, we can only do so much, and digital distribution and getting onto curated playlists was definitely something that we were lacking. So once we signed on with them, they've been incredible, and we've been able to, they've really been able to get our artists out there onto these curated playlists and everything.
Sure.
Awesome.
All right, I'm going to be the devil here and talk against the playlists here. I always look at it, and I get it. I get it that streams are important, playlists are important, Spotify's important. I get all that. For fans, I get that. And for bands that are like independent, that are making their money off of their YouTube plays or their Spotify plays or whatever. For a label, though, and again, this is me looking in and not being a label owner, I look at it as maybe the most counterproductive thing ever, just because it doesn't allow you to sell a tangible product to somebody where you can recoup what you've put in. I mean, you guys put the money, you guys ultimately put the money behind it to put out the product. You took the risk, you put in risk, especially with younger, newer bands that are not established. And then you're selling streams that Daniel Ek at Spotify is making a bunch of money on, and you're getting a penny off of every buck. And that to me just seems backwards. So explain to me how that works in your favor somehow.
But you do have to understand that people are going to buy where they want to buy. It doesn't matter. If they want to download it, they're going to download it. We might as well get 0.006%, off of it. But you're never going to change that. If they want the physicals, they're going to buy the physicals. And that's one thing we've noticed in this market is that buyers, they want what they want. They want the vinyl. You got vinyl people, that's all they're going to get. But with the streams, you have to be out there with it because it's almost like just a bonus,
Yeah. And all the more reason why, bands need to play shows, because the people that go to shows,
they're not downloading.
Those are the ones that are buying the physical media. That's where, those are the true fans, if you will, of, tangible music are located. So that's where the bands and streamings kind of balance things out. If the bands are active, then, not just relying solely on digital, that's where it makes for a successful release.
Right. Now I'm going to tell you, Matt and I have asked musicians at every level up to, I think the biggest one we asked was David Ellefson of Megadeth, the same exact question. So bigger bands.
Yeah.
And the question we always ask, and we still have not gotten a good answer yet, is why do you put the whole record out there on the platforms instead of 3 songs or 4 songs, just to let people know it's there? And then if they want the full thing, they could either buy it from you, or you hire a good web guy to put the whole album on your website where you can reap the benefit of the even the streaming. You could reap the benefit of the streaming yourself instead of somebody else.
It's genius, man. Great idea.
Definitely.
Actually, we're kind of been
playing with that idea a little bit.
But what we've been doing is putting bonus tracks on the physicals. So you get certain tracks, available digitally on Spotify and iTunes, but on the physical media, you'll get bonus tracks.
That's cool. That makes sense. All right.
Sorry, we didn't fix your answer.
No, it's okay. Look,
the quest,
Well, the truth is, the truth is, I don't know that there is an answer. I mean,
No.
that's we're in the middle of a business creative kind of lull where nobody has quite figured out the exact right way to do it. I think, is that fair?
Well, it's always changing as well. You know,
Mhm.
one minute it's digital is everything, then all of a sudden it's CDs are making a comeback for it, you know?
Yeah.
It's just like social media, it's constantly changing and you just have to be out there available for everybody, you know?
Right. Sure. Well, one more pet peeve one. I know I'm being the prick in this interview, but that's okay.
No, I love it.
Yeah.
I
This
actually
is
enjoy it.
well, this is
Like we're on
one.
trial with questions. Really great questions.
Oh, thanks. Well, this is one Matt and I have talked about a million times, and he's not going to ask it because he's nicer than me, but I will. The problem that we have had with hardcore bands, and not necessarily your bands, not necessarily not your bands, I'll just leave it there. We can't get them to promote their interviews. That
Yeah.
we'll do interviews with and I'm not only saying for us, I'm just saying in general, we notice more with hardcore bands than with any other kind of bands. They're hyped. Every one of them tells us at the end of the interview, oh, make sure that we get the link so we can get it out there and blah, blah, blah. And then nothing. And I know that has to drive you guys crazy too, because you spend the time to get the interview. And I know it drives us crazy, like, because we and probably me more than Matt will probably even tell you this. I have much more of a mainstream audience that follows what I just do, outside of Aftershocks, where it is such a good avenue for them to reach the people that aren't already sold on hardcore or sold on metallic hardcore. And they just don't push it out there. And it's like, it's such a frustrating thing. And I have to think for you guys, the only things that you guys ask your bands to do is show up for gigs and promote what you're putting out. And when they don't take that step, that has to make you crazy. So how do you guys as a label encourage bands to promote more than just the album and the tour dates?
We send them all the files to promote with. Hey, here's this video. It's going live tomorrow. Post it,
Yeah.
Right.
But you're right. It is definitely a challenge. And I think it's a mix between some of these guys just get off the interview and their minds go elsewhere and they forget and they just, and it's a mix between, I don't know. What do you think? It's a tough one because it is a challenge that we face.
Yeah, and it's hard because obviously I don't know what they think or how they think, why they're acting that way. There's a variety of reasons, I'm sure. I don't think it's anything ever to be disrespectful.
Right, definitely not.
Yeah. And it's just some people have it, the cadence of, all right, I'm going to share it, and some people don't. And I think it's really a minority of people that are really actively resharing because, like, we got a fair amount of followers, a decent amount, nothing crazy, but of that percentage of the people that are active, it's a relatively small percentage. So it's just like with bands, there's just a relatively small percentage of bands that are actively reposting. I know myself, I'm like intended to repost everything that I can, but sometimes it gets overwhelming, just trying to keep up with everything and repost. So I have a hard time criticizing the bands for things that I'm not 100% at, you know what I mean?
Right.
So if I was like the golden boy of reposting everything, then I could be a little bit more critical and say, guys, you need to repost more. But like with us, like during the release or something, as these links or reviews are coming in, either we'll put a graphic together or we'll tell them to reshare, send them the link, like Kim said, just to try and encourage as much as possible.
Right. And as we've seen too, like we have bands that you'll have one member that's super active, but he's not the one posting on their band page.
Right.
He's on all his social media pages, but he's not posting from the band page,
Right.
Pictures of his cat.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, in my opinion, I think with hardcore bands, just from what I've seen, I think with what it is the hardcore band, the scene itself, they enjoy their corner. A lot of I think genres they like to branch out. They want to branch out. They want to just to get out of just, you know, their immediate genres, you know, scene or whatever you want to call it. Where to me, I mean, hardcore people, they should enjoy it. Their thing is like, hey, we like it in this corner and we're staying here.
Yeah,
And I think that's the reason why if you see some of them, they'll promote certain things, but it'll be maybe if it's from like a real, you know, sort of underground, maybe hardcore punk sort of zine or podcast or whatever it may be, they'll be a little bit more, you know, willing, I guess, to share more than if it's like, say, you know, maybe an interview that we do, because we have a bigger scope with the type of bands we do on Aftershocks, even though we've kind of, you know, cut that down a bit as well over the last year. But for a while, we did have it pretty, you know, pretty wide open. So I think that's what it is too. I think a lot of hardcore bands just like, hey, we like it over here, and this is what we're doing. If, you know, we'll take the interview, cool, we'll do it. But it doesn't really, I think, resonate them to go out there and kind of promote it the way they would have, say, if we were like, you know, like, you know, for instance, when the Brooklyn Blast Furnace, when that was going, yeah, it was a huge podcast. Everyone's listening to it. Those bands would, you know, repost that all the time because it was a really specific hardcore podcast at the time it was. And that's just sort of my philosophy, I think, is what it is they just like their corner, you know, and they prefer to stay in. That's why a lot of them, I think, don't want to tour either. I think they just like, you know, where they are, and they're comfortable in that zone.
No,
You know?
definitely. And I think it's really important for everyone to realize that, you know, supporting all the podcasts and everything like that, that's where a lot of people are gaining exposure. They're listening to this podcast and going, oh, wait, who's that band? And now they're going to go check them out. So the more we can get you guys out there, it's helps the entire scene, you know, grow.
Sure.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
And at its core, you know, the reason why a lot of kids get into hardcore is because it's so stripped down and genuine. It's not even, you know, hardcore is not even like a musical genre, if you will. It's just kind of a cultural thing, you know what I mean?
Sure.
So I would say the majority of kids that play hardcore really have no aspirations to be, you know, as big as Metallica. You know, they want to get out there and do their thing, and they're very, very low key in that aspect.
Right.
If that makes any sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, no doubt. So let's talk about I mean, I know you alluded to before, you had a big announcement today. Why don't you go ahead and just keep, you know, I guess, talk about what's going on with the label, what you got coming up, and fill us in on what we can expect coming out soon from Upstate.
Sure. You want to go? Or? Yeah, it's, you know, we had 3 releases this year. We started off with Gloves Off, their full length, Brick by Brick, and Smash Your Enemies. And now we've kind of got into a planning phase. And I'd say we have about 10 releases coming up.
Oh, wow.
That are definitely going to be taking us well into 2023.
And the majority of them are newer bands that were new bands to the label.
Yeah, we got some, you know, OGs, if you will, you know, coming to old. We got one really very cool surprise that Chris, you'll love for sure. It's transcending another genre, but you'll hear that
towards October.
Yeah, you'll hear that announcement coming up as well. So yeah, we got a lot of things going on right now, a lot of new signings. We got some, you know, of our current roster, they're going to be coming out with some new music as well. So really an exciting time. Well, you know, we'll be at the Decibel Fest. You know, the folks over at Decibel asked us to participate, and of course we obliged. And really stoked on that one.
That's great. Yeah, very cool. Well, the other question I have too, and now that you guys won the Edison Award, is Mike Valenti going to get you guys a Jack Daniels for your own out Upstate Records Jack Daniels?
No.
No.
I think he's done with
I think he should. He's done, huh?
That's all right. He gave us the barrel of Madball, so we have that barrel.
Oh, nice. Okay.
That's our, you know, thank you.
That was our gift.
No doubt, man. Well, guys,
the big 55-gallon barrel. We have that.
Wow.
Nice.
Wow, damn, 55 gallons. Damn.
That's awesome. Well, guys, obviously, man, you know, you guys have a lot going on, lot coming up. So I'm going to ask kind of maybe it's an obvious question, maybe it's not, but at this point, with the way the business is, with the way Upstate Records is growing, what does it take for you to feel like a release is a success? Is it numbers? Is it that the band was able to get out there and go on tour, or tour nationally, or tour internationally? I mean, what is it that at the end of the day, you'll be able to say, you know, Brick by Brick, successful release. Smash Your Enemies, successful release. This release, not as good. You know, how do you judge it now?
That's a really good question.
Really
There's
good
a lot of
question.
factors that go into that. I think the first and foremost ultimate thing was their growth. You know,
Okay.
it was their growth within the band. Did they get
Yeah.
to, you know, expand to the next market or get themselves out there? Yes, of course we want finances, but I mean, I'll let you take that part on.
Yeah. It really is a great question, and it gets back to what Kim was talking earlier when we talk to bands and discuss their upcoming release. We ask them, you know, what are your goals? So if we're on the same page up front in defining those goals, we can develop, you know, that strategy on how to get
Mhm.
there. And it may seem like, oh, every release has the same goals, but that's not even close to, you know, being the case. You know,
Mhm.
the goal may be like, hey, we want to tour Europe. Okay, that's very specific, and we can drive towards that. So when you say, you know, how do you measure success? Well, there's just a lot of factors. Obviously, we want to move the physical units that we've invested in. The band
Sure.
wants to see that as well.
Mhm.
You know, really, in what I was going to say, and this may sound corny, but when the band say that was a good release, that's how we
Okay.
measure success. You
Oh,
know, if
okay.
the band is happy, then we're happy. And generally speaking, if the band is happy,
That
then
we're happy anyway.
yeah, we're going to be happy anyway. So,
Mhm.
Sure. And then last, oh, go ahead. Go ahead,
no, I
Mario.
was just going to say, great question.
Oh, thanks. Well, the last thing is you know, and this goes back to when I worked at a small label, and now it's probably a little different because this label was definitely way more mainstream than what you guys are doing, but their goal at that time was they had one band, and I'll just say who it was. It's not a big deal. It's not a secret. It's Standby Records, and they had
Mhm.
Black Veil Brides,
Yeah.
and they sold Black Veil Brides to Atlantic. You know, they were able to take that band and sell it to Atlantic. So
Wow.
then the whole business model became, let's sign a bunch of bands, build them up, and sell them to Atlantic or Elektra or whoever it was. You know, that they had that model in mind. And I don't think you guys have that model in mind, but
But
let's just for the sake of the argument though, say one of these bands were to hit on a big level like that, like I don't know, maybe they got like a national tour with Hatebreed and they blew up. They had a single that hit somewhere and it blew up. Would you want to sell, and they got an offer, you guys got an offer to buy the band. Would you want to sell that band because it might outgrow the label itself, you know, what you can provide financially and you know, as a label? Or would you want to hold on to that band to try and grow your label around them as like a pillar?
well, another good question, but ultimately I think it would come down to what the band wants to do.
Okay.
If they want to go up to that next label, then we're going to push them there and we're going to sell it and we're going to do what we can to get them there. Because ultimately our goal is to gain them, you know, success. If they want to stay with us, it's not because we're doing it to build around them. It's doing it because they see something in us and they want to stick with us.
Yeah, and you know, we said all along because you know, obviously we stepped into this as a new label, you know, fresh, and we just wanted to grow, and we wanted the bands to grow with us, and if we could be part of them, you know, taking their brand to the next level, then mission accomplished. You know, we're not money hungry. We're scouting for bands and seeing what we could do to trade up and sell
Right.
them on the market. You know, that just I don't know seems kind of sketchy to me. But
You have to understand this whole label started up as a hobby,
yeah,
you
exactly.
know?
True.
But I
Well,
can understand. You know, a label starting to fall into that kind of philosophy and I don't know. I think it really starts to affect your integrity, you know,
Yeah,
the
big time.
authenticity of those relationships. So here we are, you know, talking with you as a band, and you know, we want you to come on to the family, and we're going to nurture. You know, we're going to develop this partnership, and then meanwhile, we're like, we're going to just sell them anyway. Like,
No,
are you kidding?
yeah.
But I
not
guess you
even
know
really
there are
anything that
people
really
that are
crosses.
like that. You know.
Mm-hmm.
Well, how much does the model differ between, say, a newer band you guys are signing and obviously a veteran band? I mean, like we're talking a lot about obviously you guys growing bands, but with bands that are already grown, and they just, and don't necessarily need to develop as much. I mean, how much does your model and philosophy with everything change from those well-established bands like a Leeway or Sub-Zero compared to, say, the Gloves Off or Smash Your Enemies?
Well, it's basically, where do they need the help with? You know what I mean? They need help with the growth. We're not, the marketing plans will change based on who it is, you know what I mean? And
Mhm,
only to suit them, not because they're a big band or a little band. It's,
mhm,
we're not going to put a huge marketing campaign into a band for a 4-song EP when we could save that money and put it into their next release that could be 8 songs or 10 songs or something like that.
Sure.
mhm.
So basically, it's gauging it on the bands. What is their need? And we're going to tailor it to them specifically and what they need. I mean, we want them to succeed. So we don't want to say, oh, you need 1,000 CDs when they're only going to sell 100.
Mhm.
We
Right.
want to put them in the position where they're going to sell out and we need to reorder
Okay.
so that they can be making some money, because we want to ultimately give them, and we have like the kitty, we call it. We put money aside when they're banking it away, and then we can put it towards their next release, or they can take it for tour, or really
Well, very
just
cool.
helping them, build that nest egg for whatever's coming next for them.
Mhm.
That's awesome. That's great.
Absolutely. Well, guys, obviously, I think you guys can tell we love what you guys are doing. We are huge
Yeah.
fans of Upstate Records over here, and we definitely want everybody that's listening to go check out the bands, even if you don't buy anything. I suggest you do, but if you don't, at least you listen. Give them a listen. Where should we tell people to go to take a listen and check out the bands that are over there on Upstate Records?
Probably your best bet is Upstate Records at bandcamp.com. That way you can go in, you can,
Preview each one.
trial, listen to the
Okay.
music without any investment. But obviously, all of our releases are up on iTunes, Spotify, Amazon, all those
And Upstate
places.
Records New York.com.
Yeah, for physical media, you can come to our store at upstaterecordsny.com. We have various links there. It can take you to vinyl, CDs, blah, 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 all kinds of
Sure.
stuff.
Well, one more
Awesome.
time, the label is Upstate Records, and I'm just going to tell everybody, just go and buy Bushido Code, for God's
Yes.
sakes.
Oh,
Buy
yeah.
There you
that
go.
record. It's so damn good.
And Gloves
So,
Off too.
And Gloves
Yeah.
Off, too.
Yes.
Yeah.
And Smash Your Enemies.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Exactly.
all
Brick by
of them.
brick.
All of them.
I'm not partial or anything, I swear.
Nice. Well, Mario, Kim, thanks so much for joining us here on Aftershocks.
Yeah, thank you guys so much.
Yeah.
Thank you guys so much for
Matt
having
and
us.
Chris, thank you. Have a great night. Cheers.
All right. When it's time to rock, it's time to tune in to Crash Course Radio. Featuring the very best of the heavier music, from Slayer to Clutch to Fear Factory, it's all in one place, Crash Course Radio. To tune in to Crash Course Radio, simply visit www.cmsradio.net. You can also tune in on the CMS Network app by opening the app, clicking the musical notes at the top right corner, and selecting Crash Course Radio from our stations. All the best heavy music is there, so you should be too. Ditch the commercial radio and make Crash Course Radio your everyday station.